And good morning. Welcome to today's broadcast of with VRS and RPG Coffee. I'm on with Nathan France, Chief Giving Officer for RPG Coffee. How you doing this morning?
Doing awesome, George. How about yourself?
Every day's a holiday, every meal's a cup, and I'm drinking some RPG coffee out of my Ohio State cup. You like it?
Yeah, giddy up.
Wait a second, I didn't get one of those. I got your coffee, but I didn't get. I didn't get. I have to, for my Ohio State cup.
I
So
love it. I'm on it.
So one of the reasons we're doing the show this morning is to announce, that RPG Coffee and VRS are going to partner up together. Um, we're going to have Nathan on the shows. He's going to do shows together. We're going to also, start doing some events. But the other thing is that we are going to have some coffee recipes with uh, RPG, which is real people giving. And tell us a little bit about your company, about how you guys operate and how you give a lot of your money to, you know, um, veterans and to, you give to helping people, veterans, causes and the like.
Yeah, George. First of all, always good to hear your voice. RPG kicked off, July 4th, 2018, George. A couple of my sons were in the military, of course. And what we kept getting back is like, hey, there's thousands, literally, George, of charities all over the country that are serving veterans, right? But what we found is it was almost full time asking for money to fund those organizations, which are just amazing. But it was almost full time asking for money and part time at, hey, actually, what are these good works we're going to do? So we got together a bunch of veterans, business owners, just high level people, George. And we said, well, look, we got to figure out some way to sustainably fund these projects, right? Whether it's Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, home base with the Red Sox, Eagles Healing Nest up here in Minnesota. The list goes on, George, of all these amazing groups that know exactly if they had more money, they'd know exactly how they would serve veterans, first responders, in this just group that you and I admire and want to support. So real people giving, RPG is kind of a play on words, right? Because most people are like, yeah, rocket propelled grenade or the fancy Russian words that you would use to actually spell that out. So we said, well, look, what if you flip that and said, look, real people giving. So we're a supplement company, George, that like our coffee lines specifically, everybody does that every day, right? Some of us it's cups, most of us it's pots, right? Some of us it's an 8-gallon thermos every day, but what could
And
we
that's on a
do?
light day.
Yeah,
The 8-gallon thermos, of course, is a light day.
that's right. And what could we do with coffee if we said, okay, take that profit from that coffee and apply it right to these groups? So let me just give you a real world example. There's a veterans group that funds it themselves, no government support, right? They want to be in charge of it 100%. It's the eagleshealingnest.org. Hundreds and hundreds, George, of veterans have been served by this organization, right? Helping get off of drugs. A place to heal is really what their motto is. So they had a couple of hot water boilers, and these things are about $110,000 to replace. So imagine a veterans group, right? That okay, where are we going to? We have no more hot water. Where's this money going to come from? So RPG, and with all of these other amazing groups, right? We got a hold of our plumbing team. We got a hold of our boiler team, right? We got a hold of just everybody who wanted to participate. So instead of George them having a $110,000 bill, we got that down to $8,000 out of pocket for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the real secret to living is giving. That's really that RPG side. So
And one of the
quality.
things that that RPG does is you have the colloidal silver. You have and it's not just the coffee. You have the colloidal silver. You have some of the which is you also have the aloe vera product. And for the people that are listening, a lot of it is not just one coffee. The one thing that Nate does, that RPG has is the coffee packet. So if you're on the go, you could slip a couple in your pocket, and then all you need is basically water, and you can, or unless you want to do it old school, you just throw the pack in your mouth and then just wash it down with hot water. I mean, but a lot of it is, and the coffee is. Tell a little bit about your coffee, about how where you source your coffee from, and how it tastes a little bit different than the regular, some of the other brands that are out there.
Yeah, George. Most of us have gotten beef from a farm, if that makes sense. If you've ever gotten beef, chicken, pork, anything direct from the farm, it tastes radically different than with something you'd get at the store. So Chris and I actually flew into Colombia several years ago and just said, look, let's start building these same farming relationships like we would do with a local farmer, right? I've got a farmer down the road from me, George, that I get my beef from, right? We buy the cow, we send it into the local butcher. He calls us when it's ready, and it's just tastes radically different. We're like, well, why don't we just do that with coffee? One, so we could get the farming community that we're dealing with and partnering with, let's get them more money than what they normally would get, right? Not only fair
Right.
trade, but let's identify, like, we've got one area that we've helped them establish a way to do clean water in their community, right? So this extra money that's coming in is going to all of these different filtration systems, right? Let's make it, leave it better than we found it. Fast forward to direct to consumer, right? We're tip of the spear in control of that quality piece, and it's more profitable that way. And we find, George, when you're more profitable, you can be more charitable.
Right. And part of the other and Buck Allen, one of our listeners, and part of it too is it also, one of the things is that I was saying to you earlier, for those of you listening, I used to intern at Nestle, and my dad retired from Nestle, and from the Taster's Choice plant. So in the coming weeks, one of the things that we're going to do with RPG, and especially, we're going to start, long term, we're going to start doing some veteran events together. But the one thing that we're going to start doing is I'm going to start showing some recipes for coffee that normally people hadn't thought about. So I'll give you an example. The Frappuccino that is served at Starbucks wasn't um, in the wasn't developed, or wasn't in the stores until 1995. And in 1991, for example, Nestle and Coca-Cola tried to do coffee cola, and we have some of those recipes. The first the latte was introduced and I'm not trying to use Starbucks, but I'm using,
Yeah.
was in 1984. A lot of the coffee recipes that we think have been around today have not. And the 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 did you know the frappe, the iced coffee, was invented in Greece in 1957?
You know what? It doesn't surprise me at all, George. Like when we're over, I'd spend a lot of time in Europe when my sons were stationed there, and they're potion mixing right. They're taking cola Weissen, right. I mean, the Germans are mixing everything in cocktails. The Greeks, I mean, this is where modern civilization, right? Greece was founded, right? So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, and the most common drink, we have um hey, good morning, Lacey. It's always nice to see one of our listeners. Um, one of the coffee drinks, the original, was the Americano, which is, during, and this is during World War II, a lot of the Americans, servicemen that were over in Europe, were, the espresso was a little too much for them. And so what they would do is they would mix one shot of espresso with, basically a canteen cup or half a canteen cup of brewed coffee. Now, and they call that the Americano. And that was literally one of the first drinks that, that the Americans had. And the, the, as coffee has developed, it's gone from from a beverage to a lifestyle.
Sure.
People today, I mean, there are two types of people in the morning, and people that drink coffee, and I, demons. I mean, how do I mean, the crazy people that, like, you got 9 hours, you got 8 hours of sleep, and you're happy, bushy. I mean,
I
but
don't know any of those people.
Yeah. None of them are Marines. I mean, I could tell
Right.
you that. But the thing about with oh, good morning, Bill. Haven't seen Bill Gammon is one of our he's been a longtime listener, a great supporter of VRS and the shows. But but one of the things that coffee has has permeated the culture is that I think that sometimes people just get tired of just drinking maybe a black coffee with a little bit of cream or whatever. But so some of the recipes that we're going to introduce with RPG is just a different way to drink coffee, and we're going to be promoting some of the events and that that you're involved with, so veterans can come out and and I will tell you this. We did a show on Wednesday with Revolution Mortgage and HER Realtors. Once a month, we're going to start having a coffee hour with them. When they're going to have RPG coffee there, and we're going to have veterans come together to teach them how to buy a home and how to get financing for their mortgage. So that's one of the
Genius.
things that they. So basically, it that's one of the things that. And if you are out there and you want a different different taste for your coffee, Folgers. Um, what you're not happy with Folgers or whatever the other brands are out there. Try RBG coffee. It's a great hey Juan, we do more by 9 a.m. than most people do all day.
That's
Or
right.
we get yelled at by Gunny before 7 o'clock than most
That's
people
right.
do in a lifetime.
Jim's already done. Let's go.
So Stone Vet is one of our Stone Vet. The guy that's on is Juan Garcia, and he is a he's an advocate for CBD for using CBD oils for using and he's one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet. One of the things that he has worked on is he does a show on Thursday nights,
Hmm. Hmm.
and what he talks about is using the CBD products, um, and it has how did to better health, better welfare for mindset, because one of the things that that Juan is very good at is he's sitting there saying, hey, listen, we're giving big pharma all the opportunities, but
No
uh,
question.
you know uh, and it's causing sometimes more harm than good. Why don't you look at CBD oil, look at THC, and studies have shown that CBD oil and you have natural cannabinoid receptors in your body.
That's right.
So when you're when you take CBD, and I think that you guys are introducing, or you have one, right? A CBD product,
So we do some white labeling with that, George.
right?
Like we've got our tip of the spear products that we've kept. To your point, George, exactly this reason why. Like, look, you don't have to be a scientist, George, to go look. You are what you eat, right?
Right,
What you put in your mouth 10 years ago at the cell, that's what you are today. Now, some of your organs regenerate faster, right? Your kidneys, liver, right?
right,
That's about a 12-week cycle. But your teeth, your bones, I mean, your entire structure, you are what you ate 10 years ago. So
right.
rolling into what you're talking about, morning, Bill. What you're talking about is like your endocannabinoid system, right?
Right.
Your body's looking for these terpenes, right? So CBD is a terpene, right? It's looking for it. So what we did is said, well, look, if you take healthy pesticide-free coffee, because pesticides, the worst thing for a guy, obviously, besides, we all know Agent Orange, right? We all know all of these
Right.
terms. Uh, One of the things that we don't ever talk about is what it does to your testosterone, right? I mean, we're
Hmm.
as a species, we're going backwards because of these chemicals that are in our food, they're in our water, they're in the air. So RPG said, look, let's start with a contaminant-free medical grade certificate of analysis product and then move it forward. So whether it's, CBD, you're supposed to be eating this stuff, but I didn't go out in my backyard this morning and cut some hemp, right? And mix it up in my
You
salad.
didn't?
Right?
Damn slacker.
Well, we're just we're busy, right? Everybody knows that they're supposed to be eating clean food, drinking clean water, but it's too easy now to run into a gas station and grab a bottle of water knowing that I need to be hydrated. Don't be not hydrated, but that's probably not the best choice for me. So the faster groups like us, in this amazing VRS group, right, the faster we can go, look, let's make it simple, let's make it cost effective, let's make it natural versus chemical in every way that we can. Uh,
Right.
the faster that happens, the healthier we get as a team.
Well, and then one of the things that, isn't brought up, and I will tell you this, because I study mitochondrial repair and,
Mm-hmm.
have done so. I did so when I was at Ohio State. And one of the things that people are absent of this, soybean, soy products actually reduce testosterone. Um, and he makes a valid point about that. Before World War II, all animals used to eat it and used to be in our diet. One of the largest hemp farms in the United States is in a place called Portage, Indiana, and where there's which is east of Chicago, by the national, where there's the Portage or something Dunes Park that that is on Lake Michigan, but they used to grow it, and even there are stories of where Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington, and I can't remember the other gentleman because he's one of the, I'll think of it in a second,
Mm-hmm.
but where they were at where he was at in Monticello in Virginia, they used to grow hemp, and they would use it for farm feed. And there's stories about during the early times of our country that we used to use hemp to feed our livestock and animals.
That's right.
One of the other things that's different about hemp, and cover that, is that prior, hemp, you could feed it to sheep, in fields, and they didn't tear it up like they do grass, where hemp stays in the ground, so they can't root and we had a healthier diet. And up until like the early 1900s, people, what people don't realize is that buffalo or bison was our number one, um, source of meat in the United States.
Right.
It wasn't cow.
Yeah.
And then, when as we developed, and we had corporate farming, now we're feeding feed that's got chemicals in it. And it's very hard to get free range, free range products, and that's what that it means, and is that you're not feeding it commercially. And then the thing with RPG is that you're getting it without some of the pesticides, some of the, because the countries that coffee grows in, it doesn't grow in every country. I mean, it's not easy. People don't, in order to grow coffee, you need a high ash content in the soil, and the best. This isn't, and I'm going to say this, and hopefully it's not, it's the best coffee in the world, bar none, is not that Kapalua, the stuff that that they chase around
Yeah.
goats to
It's
get.
marketing. There. That's all
That,
marketing. That's
yeah.
right.
The best coffee in the world comes in from Honduras, and it's a place called Cafe Ray. They have won more. Um, that bean has been used by more growers than anything else, and the reason is it's because it's on the base of an old dormant volcano. So they took that bean, and they've sold it to different, to different companies across the planet. And the other misnomer is that the darker the blend, the better the taste, and that's not true either. So,
Well, we live in that, George. We
huh?
live in that world now where we all, you and I are old enough to remember Michael Douglas in *Romancing the Stone*. Right?
Right,
He's in the jungle. That's actually what a true natural
right.
coffee plantation looks like, right? It's got, I mean, bananas. There's indigenous trees. The birds are doing the pest control. It's low yield, right? But it's an amazing. You know
I,
it.
I'm gonna. No way the lighter. Yes, it is the some of the best coffee. I'll give you an and Juan, you have to try this. I will get you some of it, but there's this Vietnamese blend that it is blondish coffee. It literally looks, it doesn't look like coffee, and it has some of the best taste. And the the reason is the bean, it determines where. And if you look at some of the plantations, and so what Nestle did, and I'll give you a little bit of an idea, because Nestle created the coffee buying um, process, and people just copycat it. They would go to places across the world, um, that they would go and buy. They would set up stations, and they go to the co-ops, and they would set up stations, and then they would buy X amount of coffee. Well, now, um, when Nestle did that, a lot of their coffee that they find out was the coffee that once they started, like some of the caffeine in the coffee is not the same across blends either.
That's right.
So there's a coffee in, I think it's Kona, one of the Kona brands, one of the Kona strains has the most caffeine. Now, if you take that, it's like, dividing by the color four. I mean,
Right.
and I mean, it's like you could taste the color, green. Yeah, I mean, it is hyper caffeinated. Now, what they've had to do is, with hypercaffeinated coffee, is draw the caffeine out, re-add it to the process.
That's right.
So when I was in college, I got to tell you a funny story. My dad, I was at Ohio State, and my dad used to bring home. Now, I love coffee. I've drank coffee since I don't know how long, since I was like, you know 3. And I've drank the Demetasi, the Greek coffee, the espresso,
Mhm.
and so my dad brought home, when he was a Taster's Choice, he brought they made the Taster's Choice decaf, which decaf is like going to McDonald's for a salad. I don't understand that. I mean, if you're going to drink, I mean, seriously, just give him your man card. But he brought in a half gallon of caffeine oil, and so I took, and the caffeine oils was, that they took it out from the Taster's Choice because they made decaf. So I took a couple tablespoons of that and mixed it in with some orange juice.
Yep.
And let me tell you, I was doing, advanced calculus for, but again, it goes back to, the coffee. Most people don't study how coffee is made. They go down and they grab the first thing they can find off the shelf. And they're like, oh yeah, and the roasting process makes a difference in the taste. Because you can roast, the French people think that French roast is French coffee. It's not. It's the process which they roast. The bean. You can't make coffee without the bean being roasted in the first place. It just doesn't work. And to those of you who are listening, the single best process to make coffee is a French press. And what you do is you put the coffee grounds, add hot water, press them down, pour the coffee. That is by far the single best way of making coffee. It has been so the second best is, Mr. Coffee, pour over the grinds. But or you just basically put the rounds in your mouth, wash it down with water, be a man about it.
And George, so fast forward to RPG Super Coffee, right? We took all of that great data, that whole bean, we
Right,
pulverized the bean so it's micro ground.
right,
We don't add any emulsifiers, which is a fancy term for contaminant, to get it into a stick. We do mix it with a glyconutrient called Ace Mannan. Our brand is RPG Aloe. Modulates the immune system. It alkalizes the coffee, raises your adult stem cells. I mean,
right,
it's wonderful to drink with the coffee. Most of the time, people, George, though, they don't care. They just want a smooth cup of coffee. Or like when my son Matt was in the Middle East, they were drinking, cold coffee, all day. Then the sun goes down. Now they're back to hot coffee. So that micro ground, George, you literally could throw it in a bottle of water, shake it twice, boom, it's completely mixed. So that's where we built that stick coffee, actually originally for DOD. We had
right.
to bring all the ingredients into the United States, right? They didn't want anything put together outside of this country. So we do all of our in-house manufacturing right here in the United
And
States.
for the people listening, the stick coffee is I will show you it is it comes in like a flavor packet, like you add to you can just rip it open, throw it in water, and it is really good coffee. And the reason is not only is the coffee it makes it tastes like a cold brew if you add it to cold water. It tastes, if you add it to and the um one of the other things is that happens with it is that the taste is as like I said, the single best way that has been proven to make coffee is you need to, there's an oil in coffee that you need to warm up that in the bean. The single that pour over, French press is number one. Pour, pouring hot water over grounds is second. But the coffee with the stick that you guys have developed is one of the best tasting, let's say, instant, coffees that you can make, and with it being cold or warm, because I've tried both, and it has a very solid flavor. I have to admit that you guys that recipe is on point. I mean, it is and I'm a coffee connoisseur. I mean, there are two things in this world I could tell you. There's two things I know the taste of. One is scotch. The other two is coffee. And oh, my daughter is on. Hey, daughter. Good morning. Stephanie Beatty is my adopted daughter, so
I love it.
she's but you talk about coffee is, and it's also unlike any other beverage, and I think that other than it's where it's a comfort. Um, it is a comfort. Like meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans is a comfort food,
That's right.
but coffee is a comfort drink. I mean, and oh my God, see this guy right here, Tim Latour. He's a yeah, I forget yayo or whatever the mating sign is for ammo bears. So when he was in the military, he had ammo drop on his head. So he's been, it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. So, this is why we used to haze boots, this right here. Um, and so and so next time I see you, just when you get waterboarded, don't take it personally. Um, but coffee has become a comfort drink more so than you know, than than the alcohol. But as a non-alcoholic drink, coffee has become our comfort, our a it's that comfort drink because you wake up in the morning, it gets your day going.
Right.
You want that first cup of coffee. I mean, I drink coffee 2 3 times a day. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
four. I don't know, it depends on the day, but it's become a comfort staple. It's become one of those things that brings you um I don't know what I don't know what it brings you contentment.
Yeah.
That there's a I mean, people can talk about alcohol, but I mean, if you don't start well, I've started the morning with a cup of with a shot of ouzo, but um the coffee is it's a comfort food. It's become a part of of Americana because people will go to Starbucks, they'll go to I'm not trying to
No.
Norma Jeans, any of it. And like I said, and for you people out there that are drinking coffee, go try different blends. RPG has some really nice blend. I mean, some really nice coffee that tastes exceptional. If you want a better tasting coffee, if you want something that is a little bit different than your run of the mill, um, then try RPG because the flavor is a lot more um it's a lot more robust, which is what I'm just trying to say. Because one of the other things that they don't tell you, and this is something that you RPG uses single source beans. Now, why is this important? Okay, why well, the reason is I'm not going to beat up on them, but Folgers and Maxwell House. will go buy beans from 15 different farmers and mix
Correct.
them together. So they don't. Nathan,
Yeah.
what is your what's your website? Given type out the they're on rpgcoffee.com. Just
Yep.
what's your website?
RPGcoffee.com, realpeoplegiving.com. Those are the
Yeah,
two.
it's rpgcoffee.com. This is Lacey Benjamin. It is rpgcoffee.com, and they've got um use actual trash water. Yeah. And so the reason that you want a single why RPG coffee tastes better, and then and like I said, I'm a coffee connoisseur, is you guys use single source beans,
That's right.
which Folgers, Maxwell House, what they like I said, they'll go and get 10, 15 types of beans. And here's it is RPG coffee. And then mix it all together so you don't have a distinct taste. And where
The other
RPG,
thing, George, that you develop is a tummy problem. Like when I fractured my back and I crushed my skull, there's about 7 years I couldn't touch. I'd take a cup of coffee, right, run to the bathroom, right,
right,
and partly because it was all the contaminant that's in there. Like when you go to a chain, right, we're not going to pick on anybody, but the chains are Starbucks, Caribou, Tim Hortons. I mean, they're the chains, right? Even it's becoming more and more popular. Dunkin' Donuts are popping up everywhere again. Their outcome is to have the coffee taste a certain way, kind of like KFC chicken.
right,
KFC chicken is no longer chicken, right? Subway chicken, no longer chicken. If you go to Subway's website and look at chicken, and it's got like 27 active ingredients, you're going, wait a minute, it's just chicken. No, they take liquid, they press it into a chicken, right? They paint those little grill marks on there. So
right,
again, it's like you look at their cucumber, it says fresh cucumber. Chicken, it's like, well, what is this? Arby's roast beef, right? Alert the media. I'm not telling you anything that people don't already know. With coffee now, George, what they're doing is they're taking what's left, they pulverize it, right, and they spray the flavor or the finish on it, right?
right,
And they're like, well, look, if I can put let's say 2% silica dust in there, or I can put a contaminant in there that is a filler, but it still tastes like coffee. Well, where the older we get, right? I'm in the 45 plus club, right? I'm a grandpa these days, right? The older we get, now we're like, well, wait a minute, I drink this and I get the comfort because I'm tasting it. It's hitting my palate correctly. But
right,
my eyes don't feel the same. I kind of feel foggy. My stomach doesn't feel the best after that second cup. Well, what the heck is in here? Well, they've hyper caffeinated it, right? I mean, like a 20 ounce, like a 20-ounce Starbucks. There's more coffee in there than 3 Red Bulls, or more caffeine than 3 Red Bulls,
right,
right? So you go up and then you crash. Well, that's their model, right? They want you to come back in. They're going to hit your app with a coupon in the afternoon. And again, none of that's wrong, right? It's all marketing. It's how they build their brand and their business. Versus now, George, there's a group of us that are going more natural versus chemical, right? We want to be more healthy than not healthy. We want to add to people versus take away, right?
right.
And that market now is just exploding, right? You watched Amazon buy Whole Foods the other day, right? They're like, look, this is a
Well, and one of the things that I want to explain something that so Monsanto uses and a lot of places use pesticides.
yes,
Now, in order to get the pesticide off, they use a process where they try to spray the and the problem with that is that the flavor it detracts from the flavor. That's why when you go and get produce from just something as simple as going getting corn from the Amish, the Amish have a tendency not they use natural. They don't use whatever cowgill or any of those. They use a lot of natural things, so the food tastes a little bit different.
yeah,
It's
and
the
the
same thing
corn,
with
right, George? I mean, the corn literally tastes amazing, but it's like this big, right? Their
right,
strawberries are like the size of a nickel.
right,
When you go to the store, and all of a sudden you can get a strawberry, it's like an orange.
right, yeah, and so when you roast the beans, a lot of and this is why that it's important when you roast the beans, a lot of that pesticide, some of it cooks off, and it does. I mean, not saying that pesticides are bad. I'm not. I mean, there's some that are. but for the whole part, it does affect the taste. And one of the things is that when then you brew it, you get it to, to consumers, that taste is not exactly, completely gone. And that's why, um, green sourced coffee, which is not it's not a brand, but it is used under the, I think, where the World Trade Organization, green source coffee is one that it's, farmer friendly. And one of the things that's important about with RPG is that if you aren't using pesticides, um, as people have learned that, people with celiac disease, one of the things that has been an argument, and people with a gluten intolerance, a lot of people, there's a prevailing issue that has said that people with a gluten intolerance, a lot of that has had a big influx of that is because of the pesticides that we use. And because we didn't have when I'm 55, 30 years ago, or when I was in high school, even in high school and middle school, I mean, I was class of 1984. I don't remember a lot of people having, being allergic to peanuts, being allergic to, to gluten. I mean, we used to eat cardboard and donuts and we were fine. I mean, now,
George,
you
they used
know,
to have free milk, right? Like at my elementary school, right? It was free milk, and it was chocolate milk on Fridays, right?
right,
And there was no challenges with that. But
right,
now, fast forward to artificial flavors, colors, contaminant, pesticides, herbicides. Your gut wall is like a castle wall, right?
right,
So every time I punch a hole in that wall, well, of course, whatever goes into my stomach, that's just normally going to pass through my intestines, right, and flush out. Well, now that's in my system.
right.
It's like somebody who drinks blue Gatorade, right? They don't pee blue. They don't. Well, where did the blue go, right? Well, that stuff all stays in your system. So now it's stacking in my system. Well, fast forward to, like you were talking about the right, the CBD movement, right? You're seeing everybody go back to natural. One, it tastes better, right? It
Right.
almost takes sometimes when you drink a real cup of coffee, it takes almost 3 days to reboot your system. Like, you start eating more fats instead of sugar, right? You eat something natural versus chemical by about the third day you do it, or like the third cup of RPG super coffee. You're like, man, I stopped at the McDonald's and tried to pick up a cup of coffee. I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and the thing about with, like I said, with the coffee that I've tried a couple of recipes to see how it goes. I'll give you an idea. And this is one of the coffee recipes that I know that, so you take a cup of coffee and you put in over ice, a little bit of half and half and a little bit of RC cola. And that drink was something that Nestle, they were using it with Coca-Cola, but that is a drink that you just will not believe how good it tastes. But again, you know, it goes back to you need a good quality bean. You need not to be drinking, stuff that is, blended. And it's the same thing with, and I mean, not to go off to the, scotch, but single malt scotch means it came from a single brewery. And so the taste is a little bit better. Blended scotch means that they went to 10 different distilleries, mix it all together, and then, that's what Crown Royal is. But if you go, something like, a single, one blend, and it's the same thing with, with coffee. If you just want, like brown water, then, go get, Maxwell House or Taste, not Taster Choice, but Maxwell House or Folgers. That's what you're going to get. But if you want a really good cup of coffee, RPG coffee, it has a much better taste. And the other thing is that you're not going to get the one thing that, and you alluded to this about the, the pesticide. You're not going to get that bitter aftertaste, because that when you have a good process in making the coffee, that bitterness doesn't, I don't know what the right, how to say it, but you don't have that bitter aftertaste. Like, if you go get a cup of coffee at, McDonald's, or, I think Burger King, I should say this. I think Burger King should be thrown in jail for making coffee. I mean, it just and um, it's like people that don't use their turn signal to turn left on red. I mean, they should not be allowed to sell coffee. But
And
the
George, the last thought with that is when Burger King gets their coffee, right? We're not picking on them. I mean, it's just,
no,
hey,
I'm picking on
what's
them.
your
They're
deal?
horrible coffee. I'm picking on them right now. I mean,
Well, right.
I'm sorry, Burger King people are fans. I'm sorry, your coffee is. I mean, you are the Coast Guard of the branches. I mean, it's
So
just
it shows up, George, in a bag, right? Like a silver bag. And it's
right,
exactly what you brought up. It's whatever's left. They spray a finish on it, right? They throw it in the pot. Hopefully the water's filtered, right? Nobody's ever cleaned. You ever seen them clean a coffee pot? It's like when
nope,
you're on an airplane. Have you ever see the flight team? They bring their own coffee. They get
right,
unlimited free coffee on the flight, but you never see any of the staff drinking the coffee on the flight, right? So that's their process, right? They get this giant bag. It's whatever's left. They grind it up. It's almost like, George, if you've ever been at like a group home, the eggs don't come eggs, right? They come
right.
as powder.
Who are
They
you
add
talking to?
water and
We
they make
had
eggs,
group eggs in the field. They come as, you
right?
know, yeah, I mean, they, I ate, I ate stuff out of a mermite can, but but that's what it goes back to
That's right.
is, and on top of that, it's not only you're getting a good coffee with RPG, and there's a lot of people out there that are making great coffee, but the reason the one of the reasons we're partnering with RPG is because one of the things is that we want to help veterans. Um, the one thing that that we are partnering with UpHealth is we started a program where veterans can go get equine therapy, music therapy. We have where they can get mobility help. That we have a program we've introduced where you get mobility. So one of the reasons we're dealing with RPG is that we want RPG is helping veterans and people that are it's not just for the taste of coffee. I mean, it is, but at the same time, we want to give back to the community, help um, people that are um, help people that are in need, and at the same time, you get one of the better cups of coffee out there. And I think that that's something that's I think in a marketplace, it's something that's needed because again, coffee has become a comfort drink. It is one of those things that has permutated, and I got to tell you this, back in the 80s, people didn't drink coffee like they do now.
No.
It wasn't, it wasn't and I think a lot of it is because there wasn't that many choices out there for coffee. I mean, you only had, for instant coffee, it was Nescafe, Taster's Choice, maybe that the Maxwell House instant, but there wasn't that many choices. Now you can go down to, and then there's, in the grocery aisle, there's 15 different brands. Um, but the important part is that, you're going to get a cup of coffee that is, um, pesticide free, doesn't have the bitter aftertaste. The sticks, which is yeah, I mean, and Stephanie's is right. Coffee for many folks is a luxury or treat item. They're self-care for the day.
Okay.
I mean, I know people that go and go to Starbucks, you're right, 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, it's a um it's more it's an experience, and because I mean it's just like in Goodwill Hunting, where he says, hey, let's have a cup of coffee. Well, why don't we get together and chew some caramels? It's just arbitrary. Well, coffee
Okay.
has become an experience. It's become and I think that that's kind of important.
Yeah, and it brings us together. So, like, George, we're RPG is the one of the sponsors for the country's largest ice fishing contest,
Right.
and bringing people together, keeping veterans and first responders right as the on the tip of everybody's mind. That's part of what we do. But while we're at these events, like we were at Rockfest, right? I mean, it was tens of thousands of people, right? And obviously everybody wants their coffee, right? They want the foo coffees. We make those, we make the cold brews, all the awesome stuff at these big events, of course. But while we're doing that, so like that was in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Well, all of the local sheriff's department, right, the police departments, the fire departments, all benefited from, Fort McCoy's not that far from there, and they've been dealing with some interesting stuff up there. So while RPG is participating and giving people the experience, right? Well, now the funding begins to show up, right, to pay for certain things that need to get done, right? It's a
Right.
pretty wild concept.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's more important is not the it's not that you're just making a cup of coffee. You're helping the people, the first responders, the and those and there's like I said, are you the only coffee brand out there? No, try different brands, but it's the thing about it is the one of the reasons with VRS we're trying to do is get away from if by now, this is and this is I'm going to be critical of just one thing real quick, and if you don't know that people are saying, hey, we need to bring awareness to veteran suicide. If right now you don't know that there's a problem with veteran suicides, you've been living under a rock. You really have. Everybody knows that there's a problem with veteran suicides. Your approach better be, how do you find a solution for veteran suicides? Because what you need is, you need therapy, you need to be able to have treatment. Those those are the issues that VRS is addressing. Because listen, you can do push-ups, you can do all of these, you can do, that's great. Like I said, if you don't know that there's a problem with veteran suicide, you've been living on, you haven't been on social media. What we have, what we're working on and what we've been developing is, like I said, we have a place in Florida that we're going to send veterans for equine therapy. Along with it, we have satellite programs, which are wellness and meditation. Because what we've seen is that when you have therapy for veterans, it stops them from getting to the point that they want to kill themselves. And this is something that we don't talk about in the veteran community, because we seem to gloss over it. If a veteran kills himself, it's on their third attempt. It's not the first or second. It's usually by the and I hate to bring this up first thing in the morning, but last year in the United States, we had 1.4 million people try to kill themselves. We had 40,000. We had 40,000, roughly between over 40,000 were successful. The problem is, it's not the awareness. If 1 out of 321 people are trying to kill themselves, if you don't understand that that's a problem, just suicide as a whole, you're not on social media, or you're delusional. The issue is, what do you do to fix it? Well, number one, you need people getting into therapy. You need
Right.
people getting help. You need to talk about your problems. You need to and the one stigma that we've had, that we've noticed, is, if I'm just going to use a name. Um, if you have, I'm just going to use Juan. If Juan breaks his ankle and goes to the hospital and gets it set, puts in a cast, and says, "Hey, Juan, you broke your ankle. We need to put you in a cast."
Yep.
Nobody blinks an eye. Oh, okay, Juan, you're in a cast. You're in crutches. What'd you do? Wow, I broke my ankle. Okay, fine. But the minute that you have somebody says, "Hey, I went to go to get therapy because I'm having issues with my headspace," people are like, "Oh my God, you're crazy," and that's another and so what we've said is, listen, let's approach this with the same fervor. Let's go out and have let's approach them. Let's have programs that are helping you get better. Because once you get better a little bit, and it's a geometrical progression. Once you get a little bit better in this field, then it goes in that other, and that is one of the reasons why it's important to support groups like RPG that are helping first responders, helping them, because you're helping develop a system of care. And that's something that people just don't, it's just, sometimes it's lost, and it's frustrating, because we've seen where just a little bit of effort and a little bit of care goes a long way for some.
That's right. Health is your first wealth, my brother.
And Heather makes a good point because most nonprofits don't offer skill set, just awareness. And and she's right about that. I mean, it's great. Like I said, it's great that we have awareness, and he brings up another, he brings up the suicide rate is a lack of sleep, and that's what I am, that Juan Garcia with the stone vet. There are a lot of, the problem is once you develop what's called frontal lobe dysplasia, you have a lot of issues. The um the thing about it is that it goes that one of the things that coffee does help, and as a stimulant, it helps neural pathways. And that is one of the things that why you feel better after a cup of coffee is that the caffeine helps your the process and your neural pathways get better. And that is one of the reasons why it's become such a bastion of and not just in America, all over the world. Coffee's become it's the third most drank it's the third most popular drink in the world.
That's right. Water's number one, tea's number two, coffee's number three.
Yep.
George, it's interesting. We call it on our team, right? We've got a great team of business professionals, veterans, right? We're masterminding constantly, and we're always looking at like, look, what's the lowest common denominator, right? So if somebody says to me, it's a lack of sleep, well, okay, let's just bring it down to the lowest common denominator, right? If it's a food source issue, if it's a clean water issue, it's the air we're breathing,
Right.
right? So talk about Monsanto and these groups, right? Michael Landon, Patrick Swayze, right? We watch all of these amazing people at the top of their game move out to a farming community, and all of a sudden they get pancreatic cancer, right? They get these rare, cancers. Well, okay, well, what was that from? Pesticides, herbicides, right? These farms and ranches that they moved out on.
See, this right here, this is why we used to haze boots. This right here is because they is um but you're talking about pesticides. You take a look at some of the people that have developed, there's like cancer clusters.
Right.
There's places in America that have developed um, Michael Landon. One of the things that they said is that when he was on the set of Little House on the Prairie, there's some sort of at the facility that was there. There's a movie that came out with John Wayne. I think it was called Comanche, um, and that it was filmed somewhere in St. George, Utah, and up there. But they had more people from that movie develop some kind of cancer than the national average. The national average for cancer is like 37%. When they went to that movie, it was like in that side developed like 45 or almost half of the people that worked on that movie developed a sort of cancer. And 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 when people talk about that is the first thing that pesticides eat up is your intestinal tract. It takes up some of the probiotics, and that's why they tell it's important to have have probiotics, have good gut bacteria. And if you don't do that, then then you're going to have issues with it. You're going to have issues with that.
Yeah. So what we do, George, is say, okay, let's use that as an example. The arguments can be made. What are the best prebiotic, right? I mean, what is the best? Well, I think if you go back 100 years ago, people were actually eating fiber, right?
Right.
So if you eat fiber, right, it's great for your gut health. So as much as what we're not putting in is what we're putting in. So like our supplement ones to the public, obviously we white label, right? We do some pretty big billion-dollar companies. We make their supplements.
Right.
Some are NSF approved, right? Because we do a lot of work with the NFL alumni. So
Right.
that's a different level. They want to be able to scan it and know that it's right safe for them to take.
Yeah. When I want to tell you a funny story. When I was at Ohio State, and for those that um, we had a girl that was at Ohio State, took an over the counter um, cold remedy.
Yeah, just went to Walgreens, grabbed something,
Yeah.
wasn't feeling the best.
And she tested positive for a banned substance. Now,
Right.
we were, and she, clearly, the results were exactly what it would be if you took, and the NCAA, had to reverse their position because they were saying, hey, listen, if you're taking something over the counter, it's on, it's not on the ban list. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't something that was, and the thing about it that you talk about with, gut health and all that, if you are taking something that is, if you're sitting there with, grabbing something that's pesticide heavy, and you wind up having that's something that's even crazier.
That's right. Heavy metals. I mean, so like we came out with an RPG defense
Right.
because people like myself, I'm already using turmeric, depending on what part of the country you're in, right? Vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, right? But from a food based, right? Where people get confused because they're so used to supplements being artificial. It used to be
Right.
a petroleum or a corn molecule. I twisted it into vitamin C. So it's like, hey, it's this as, and it's a word that's right. That's normally how you can tell synthetic. Not always, but normally you can tell synthetic, George, because it'll say, hey, vitamin C as, and it's a word you couldn't type it into Google without unless you had 15 minutes and your cheaters on, right?
Right.
Because now it's synthetic versus going, well, hey, if I get this from a food-based source, right? Your body, it's natural versus chemical, and it's just a stacking effect in your body. So yeah, that's where we've spent a lot of time. And put it this way, you're either part of the solution, right? Or potentially part of the challenge. We wanted to be part of the solution that, look, we all know if your gut health's on point, right? You just feel
Right.
better, right? The majority of your feel good hormones come from your gut, right? So if we're putting good in, it's not garbage in, garbage out anymore. It's garbage in, garbage stays,
Right.
right? So we're on the natural side versus the chemical side. And what I love about VRS, George, is that you have people that are actually, like you're talking about Juan, right? You're talking about all these amazing people that are part of VRS. They're actually doing it,
Right.
right? Hey, it may not be Starbucks scale yet, right? We're not talking billions of dollars or billions of people affected yet, but 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, right? You run that out and the multiplier just gets exponential. So the
Right.
impact from business coaching to mentorship to actually tip of the spear, it's kind of like diet, right, George? It's the people ask me all the time, they're like, Nate, you're competing still as a bodybuilder, right? On the physique side. They go, how are you doing that? I can't even get out of bed in the morning. And I'm like, well, look, it's all of these little micro steps back, almost 20 years ago, fractured back, crushed skull, to now, right? I'm like, well, I'm bone density training, right? I'm putting supplementation in there that is modulating my immune system, right? It's raising my adult stem cell count. It's protecting my hormones, right?
Right.
It's doing all of these things, right? And making sure the hair stays in, right? I mean, if you look close, there's an awful lot of grays in the beard, but it's as much what I'm doing as what I'm not doing. And part of that,
Right.
George,
And
is
you're not that
the
old. I mean, I'm
example.
55. I mean, this is gray hair. I mean, it's just that, I'm going to have gray hair, but I mean, I'm going, and I got to tell you something, just on a joke. Funny part about this is that everybody, uses these aging apps on online. I've got family that looks like me. I know what I'm going to look like at 75. I'm just going to look just like my dad. And, there's a picture of one of my cousins playing backgammon, on the island, and he's like 81, and I mean, I look just like him. So, um, but you have to educate the. This is a valid point here. As a vet, a lot of us hate reading crap, but we have to try to educate those that want to learn. And that is something that is, um, that we have to think about, is that no one ever died because they knew more, they learned more. And that's one of the things behind it. And it's the same thing with with Heather. We talk about, mobility and the ability to, to move better. Sometimes you have to train people how to move after they've been injured, because I did a show the other day about recovery, and about, I trained over at a place called Westside Barbell. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it was the strongest gym on the planet. But the way they recover is that there's a process to recovery, just as there's a process to getting stronger. And both of those have to, you have to do the same thing. If you are going to recover, you have to, there's a process to recover, to get better, that's why there's training phases, maintenance phases, and all of that is because we need to, to work on those things. And it's the same thing with, the garbage in, garbage in, garbage out. Yeah, you're right. It just stays.
George, it's the old psychiatrist joke, right? How many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb, right? The answer is one. Now it's going to be expensive. It's going to take a
Right.
long time, but the light bulb has got to want to what? Change.
Change.
And most people, in all fairness, right? Well, like Juan just brought up, most people don't want to change. The average American right now does not read one book cover to cover 18 to 65. Now, your average millionaire, your average professional athlete, right? Your average, like your right, your Army Ranger handbook, right? I mean, they're reading information, right? 12 to 18 books a day, and that's really only about 10 pages a day. I mean, we've all heard people say this, but they're not actually studying the data. They're not focused on their why, right? What's actually my purpose? I
Right.
mean, I guarantee you, everybody who goes, look, what's the hardest 10 or the hardest weight to lose is always the first 10 pounds. If you say to the person who lost it, well, my daughter was getting married, right? I needed to get in my suit, right? I needed to do so. I knew exactly why I wanted to do it. Well, now your brain opens up to all of the possibilities, right? Because you're asking better questions. I mean, you can't really hit a target you can't see,
Right.
right?
I mean, what did they tell you? And something you were talking about in boot camp, you used to carry the guidebook for Marines in your pocket, and then your drill instructors would go, grab some knowledge, and then you'd open up you'd get the book out of your cargo pocket and start reading. And I mean, and the thing about it is, I try to read a book every other week. I mean, I'm constantly reading because I mean, I don't like. Um, I keep up on trends. I read books that, for some people that would just absolutely, I read books on gap accounting. And, only the reason is because I want to run a better business. I
That's right.
read books on FASB, and I'm like, it is. And why? Because I want to run a better business. I don't want to have, and that's not easy. And the problem is that most people, I saw something, and it amazed me is that one the average person, once they graduate college, only reads like 4 more books in their lifetime.
That's right. And it's usually a manual, right? I mean, it's,
Right.
hey, you started at McDonald's, you got to go through a training manual and 40 hours of training to learn how to flip a burger.
Right.
Yeah, George, we're reading our team right now. We've got a lot of guys who just came out of the military, 6 year, 4 year guys, right? A lot of Army, a lot of Marines, a lot of Navy, and they're coming into our process. And on our leadership side and just our mindset, John Stryker Meyer, Dick Thompson, the guys that are behind Delta, right?
Right.
Uh, you know, uh, they're all these amazing guys. They just have their biography books out there, just literally on mindset and leadership.
Well, I got to tell you this. I wrote a book this year that's coming out. It's called the Book of Men, about how male role models influence our lives. And one of the things that I talk about is that in that a lot of people don't know what leadership looks like. They you I can't describe what leadership looks like. I can tell you, and the reason is it is just like you have to know what it is. And mindset is something that is, that it, and so I do, I do jujitsu, I do judo, and when we get on a mat, a lot of I tell people is like, you've got to have a mindset. What are you planning on doing? What was, what's your mindset that you get on the mat with? And a lot of people wind up, because if you have somebody trying to choke you out, armbar you, or, impose their will on you, you better have the mindset that you're going to be able to defend it. And if you're not, you're going to wind up being, you're going to get, the mindset is more important, because I can outwork um athletic ability on the mat. I mean, you can have athletic ability, and mindset will do that. But and that is something that is also important with getting better, is you've got to have, you've got to work on your mindset. you've got to work on your, your ability to learn, your ability, and if you're not learning, you're not growing, and that's the sad part about it.
And George, if somebody was watching this today, in my opinion, right, they just said, look, where do I start? Just start with that lowest common denominator. Why are you going to do what you're going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
The why.
That's right. It could be as simple as, look, like I've got grandkids. I'm picturing myself as an adult mentor to those kids, right?
Right.
So like my grandson Grayson, I want him looking at his grandpa going, hey, our family must be like genetically disposed, right? Grandpa's 6 feet tall. He's walking around at 225 and he's benching 285. Yep. I saw grandpa's pictures of when he, fractured his back, crushed his skull, but obviously our family must be able to recover faster, right?
Right.
He's developing his story at an early age. Now, in all fairness, if grandpa's walking around, he's crabby, he's self-medicating, right? He smells like cocktails at 3 o'clock every day, right? Looks like he just rolled out of a dumpster. What do you think you're setting up the mindset for that next generation, even your kids, right? They're like, look, we must be almost pre-genetically disposed, right, George? Like when you and I were younger, if you were around a farming community, you were probably going to be a farmer, right?
Right.
You could use the military maybe to get out, but if your dad drove a taxi cab, you were probably going to do that. If your family were bakers, you're probably going to do that, right? So the kids develop that mindset behind it. So I've spent a lot of time focused on why I'm doing what I'm doing. Doesn't mean don't have fun. Doesn't mean don't be perfect, right? Perfect, in my opinion, is a low standard to set for yourself because, right, nobody other than Jesus is perfect. But
Right.
if you started with why am I doing what am I doing, right? If I drink these 12 beers and a fifth whiskey, right, and take my prescriptions, that I used to self-medicate after I broke my back. After a while, you're like, well, why are you doing this, right? What's the purpose of this? Well, I could take as much energy and put that into the gym, good food, and good therapies to actually get where I'm trying to go and have a better quality of life without that stuff, or
Right.
less of it anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's that is important. And like I said, if you take nothing away other from the show, then what is your why? Because your why will keep you in the fight longer than anything else. Because there are days that that you're going to feel like you want to give up, and and your why will keep you going where everything else will fail, and that is something that I think people, and I will recommend one book, if is called The Magic of Thinking Big.
Yes.
Is one of the best books ever for that specific reason alone, is the fact that um that if you are if you can't dream it, you won't achieve it.
True that,
So
my brother.
anyway, it's I know we've been on here for an hour. I appreciate you coming on. And then for those who like I said, Nate will be doing more shows on here. We'll be talking about the product line. We're going to start. Juan, thank you. You're a good man, sir. The What we will do also, we're going to post some videos of some recipes so you guys can, try some different things with coffee, because again, coffee with cream and sugar or whatever is, I mean, people get tired of it, but the other thing is like, and I will close on this. If you need help, reach out and get help. There's nothing wrong with getting therapy. There's nothing wrong with going out there and saying that, hey, listen, even a race car has mechanics. Even
Right.
you wouldn't drive a car without checking the tires, the oil, and all that. Why is it? Why don't it? Just because you go get therapy doesn't mean something's wrong with you. You're just making yourself better.
That's right.
You get a trainer for when you're in the gym. You get there are life coaches out there. So why not get a headspace coach? And that's basically what it is. Anyway, appreciate you with all this, and we look forward to a lot of great adventures in the future and a lot of great events. And any final thoughts?
You know, uh, clean water, clean air, right? Clean food, as contaminant free as you can get it. Uh, and moving into 2022, George, this is that moment, right? You got about 30 days roughly to the end of the year. I'm getting a little goosebumps because it just take that moment and just like, look, what if I'm sitting here with Nate and George, December 2022, right? What do I actually want to have happen? Hey, you want to make $1 million? Great. You want to affect the lives of a couple of veterans? Great, right? It doesn't matter to us other than we care about you. It only really matters to you, right? If you know where you're going, right? It's like you can't hit a target you can't see. So if you know where you're going, I can tell you this, you may not even get there, but you're going to be closer than where you started this, these
Right.
next 12 months are going to go by either way, right?
Yeah. And then, and whether you're working on you or not, the next, like I said, you're going to wake up tomorrow and it's still, the time is still going to go regardless of what you've been.
That's right.
So I appreciate that. And like I said, if you guys are listening, do not take a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Get better. And, like I said, keep, keep in the future, um, you know, and that again, and if you need reach out, reach out. Thank you for again supporting VRS, and we look forward to also report RPG Coffee because they have a great day, guys, and we'll talk soon.
Yep, Gab.